Hello, everyone, and welcome to GPVWC Young Driver Tests here at Interlagos in Brazil. I am Kacper Kolodziejczyk, and I'll be taking you through this. Alongside with me will be Ben Willis.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Kacper. Yep, hello, and welcome to the Young Driver Tests, the action for Superleague, not just over yet. Got 2 hours where we'll see some of the finest talent on display, and we'll see who can show off their skills.
Yes, and I think there's quite a bit of really good talent here, and some of very well-known names from other series here at GPVWC over the last year or so. And just to mention as well, on cameras we also have Argo Teder, who's of course really good to have a cameraman. Without him, this wouldn't be happening as well. So with that, yes, it's some of the finest display and of skill in some of those drivers in lower down series, and of course some of them will probably have 1 or 2 race experiences, as far as I know.
Definitely, yeah. We've got I'm just seeing at the top of the timesheets at the moment, we've got Kacper. He's in at Adonis, and he has done a few races for Hawkeye this year in Super League. Also, his sort of full-time commitments are in Super Cup, but he's put in some brilliant performances this year, not only in the career ladder, but also in Atlantic Series. We've seen him over there as well, fighting toe-to-toe for the title, so he's definitely one to keep an eye on there.
Yes, of course, that very exciting race at the end of that of Atlantic Series this year, and that battle for championship until essentially the last lap with Wopke and Borja Milan. Also here, in fact, so those 2 drivers on the same track once again this year.
Definitely, yeah. Obviously, it was a brilliant battle we had in Atlantic Series, going right down to the wire. We'll see if we can watch them trade times as well at the top. We've got Borja in at he's in a green stripes, which knows he's actually in my car, in my test livery, which is very nice to see going around. But yeah, it'll be great to see them trading times. Also, one that I would notice, Dennis Jordan. He had some great performances in Super Cup. He's also in at Adonis, and Adonis being one of the best cars on the grid in terms of upgrades, expect to see them quite high up the timesheets today.
Yes, and another driver I think we may want to mention as well is one of the Formula Challenge drivers, Stefan Ruolt in the other Adonis. He's, as far as I know, and I've not been following that series too much, but I have driven there a couple times, and as far as I can remember, he is very, very quick indeed.
Exactly, Stefan Ruolt being, he was second in the title to James Johnson. He put up a great fight again. That went to the final round here at Interlagos. Shown some brilliant talent for, I think it was for Deltec in Formula Challenge. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do. He's in the third Adonis, and he's got the best car in one of the best cars in the field to set some really good times. So we'll see what he can do as well.
So it'll be very interesting, and of course, all the drivers will be testing these cars out in terms of how quickly they can go. But also, they want, of course, you'd want to do the race pace testing, considering this would be the best kind of amount of cars on track you're ever gonna get with real life people without you actually participating in Super League itself. So it's a very good practice to do race pace and to actual race battles, essentially.
Exactly, you're going to see drivers doing different kinds of strategies. Some people will be going for sort of quali stints, going for glory with the times, whilst others will be working through their own plan, looking at doing some race stints, seeing how the tyres feel, how the car feels as it evolves, as the fuel burns off, things like that. And some people here just to have some fun, really, try out the faster machinery with as many people on track as possible. And some are, considering their plans for next year. Do they move up a series? Do they consider looking at trying to get a Super League seat? It's a great way to sort of sort out your plans, I guess, because it's fast approaching 2017.
Yes, and the break is, of course, pretty short. In fact, is it on? If I recall correctly, this season begins around March, April.
Yeah, it's sort of late February to early March. We usually start. So
yes.
With Super League, it starts a little earlier. We have 4 sort of pre-season tests that I think they started sort of mid to late January last year. So Super League starts a little earlier, but the main actual racing kicks off end of February to March.
So yes, indeed, that's only going to be a couple of months before the are going to have to be back up and running. And to be honest, that's actually not a very long break for drivers to basically have their calming time and a little break. And I personally have to say that without a couple months break, I couldn't do it every year.
No, it's a weird one really because sometimes I feel like with these off seasons that you just really want to get going with racing again. You sort of count out the days before the off season ends. But then equally, it is nice to have a bit of a break, just sort of step away from the whole, week in week out testing racing for a bit. It's nice to sort of clear your mind. But then, off season, this is where we're thinking about, what teams are going to be in which categories, where drivers are going to go. So it's still very busy off the track.
Yes, and that is definitely the case. I personally have had that experience really for the first time myself in an endurance league somewhere else, and it was very interesting. It was lovely to have a break finally after it was only about 5 months for me before we had our culmination of that season. But it was so nice to actually have a break. But then at the same time, we were thinking of and just hoping to get the car we wanted to get, and it was a bit of a stressful situation as it was as well. So yeah, I get both sides, but I still think that having about 2-3 months of a break is so nice.
Yeah, it's nice to take your mind away from things, but then equally, as a team manager down in Formula Challenge, it's a little bit stressful, I guess. Trying to work out who's going to be driving for you next year, where you're going to be in terms of the career ladder. And there's still a lot to think about, but it's I guess there's something a little bit refreshing about taking a little break for a while.
Yes, and to be fair, these drivers will probably also drive in other places, so it depends on the drivers themselves as well. And at this point, by the way, the times disparities at the moment are quite big on track. Just to get back onto the actual track for a minute, at the moment, Mike Fint is leading in terms of times by over a second from Wopke Hostra.
That's a nice time he's set there actually, on 12:2:62, and he's in the VOD ball, which is I want to say probably the best car. Yeah, it is. I've got the development thing up on the second screen here. It is pretty much the best car out there. So we should expect to see obviously the VOD ball's quite high up, but that's a pretty good time at 12:2:62, given the track isn't fully evolved yet. So definitely keep an eye on that one.
Yes, and of course, and it depends. And as far as I know, and as far as I've read, all of the drivers have a free reign of tires. So as well, they may be going a bit quicker than the drivers would be in actual weekend because they don't have a limited, well, not supply, but limited choice of tires. So I think they can go a little softer than on the actual weekend.
Yeah, we'd end up seeing sort of towards the end of the session, maybe the last 10-15 minutes, a little bit of a super soft sort of mad dash as everybody decides to jump on the softer tyre and see what they can set. That's what I'd be expecting for, really. People will probably be using sort of this first hour to an hour and a half if they want to do a race run to do it. Just knowing a few people sort of on the softer and medium compounds at the moment, so maybe they're trying to go for a little longer runs. But as I say, towards the end of the session, we should see the times fall a bit.
Yes, and of course that is always the case in R Factor 2. Over the time, you start to get better times. Although I'm finding that sometimes when you rubber in the track too much, you actually kind of start to get nearly less of a good effect, or the track just becomes near static. I'm not entirely sure, but sometimes I did have situations where I felt like having more rubber was actually detrimental.
There's this you sort of hit a wall with your times, isn't it? It's like it's a bit weird, really. It just gets up to a point, and then suddenly you're not making any progress at all. But I'm not at one with the physics of tires and of the track, so I can't say I could explain that one really, but.
No, and I couldn't tell you much about it, even though I'm studying physics, because that's not my area of expertise.
You need to know these things. Come on.
Luckily, I do not as of yet. Anyway, actually, just I'd like to mention it because I don't think I have so far. The drivers, as far as I know, that are in this young driver test are drivers that have not driven more than 4 races. Is it?
That is correct. So the eligibility requirements are you must have driven 4 or less Super League races this year, which is why you will see the likes of Mike Quinn, Woodcock Hoekstra, who have done some races this year, both for Hawkeye, I think. But they are allowed to race allowed to test here because they haven't done the full race, which is quite nice because it means we don't have the primary Super League drivers getting involved and sort of misrepresenting the time, shall we say. It's nice to get people who haven't driven the car loads to get them in and just to see what they can do really in the high machinery.
Yes, and you can really see how drivers compare and how much the cars actually, to be fair, played a part as well in the end. It should be more dependent on the driver here than the usual, I would nearly say, because Super League has so many drivers that are so very quick.
Definitely, yeah. And what we have to remember here is, regardless of the state of the car in terms of development, we've got some people in the top cars who maybe haven't driven the Super League car as much, so they're not going to have as much experience as, say, some people who are running the lower cars. So the time should close up a little bit, and we should see hopefully some interesting results, really.
It should be very interesting. So just looking down the order again, and a couple of drivers that I see that I recognize would be people like Dino Paolini.
Yes, he had a brilliant campaign in Super Cup this year. Had some really strong results. Possibly even a win, I want to say, in Super Cup. I'm not too au fait with my knowledge of that one, but he's definitely had some absolutely cracking results there. And he sort of come out of nowhere, really. It was quite surprising when we saw him suddenly batting at the top in Super Cup. But he's shown people that he's a really talented driver. He's got really good pace, and he's showing that today. He's P7 at the moment on a 1:15.0. Who's he driving for as well? Let's have a look. He's in the Nord Zone, so that is a pretty good car out there. And it looks like he's doing sort of longer runs on the medium tyre. So there's definitely time to be found in that car, but he's showing pretty good as well at the moment.
I think another place where he actually showed up was Atlantic Series. He did quite well in that.
He did as well, didn't he? Yeah.
Yes, he was the teammate of Woodcock Hoekstra. Both of them very, very good. And if I recall correctly, they even were the champions. So, in terms of the team, but I'm not 100% on it. It's been a little while.
It's been a long day, hasn't it? It's more coffee. That's what I need.
That's what I'm having currently.
Fair enough. But yeah, definitely he's had some really strong performances, and he was with Mazurek in Atlantic Series. And as you said, they did win the team's title, so he's definitely got the correct pedigree to be, maybe he'll be in Super League next year. Who knows? I think there's going to be a lot of movement in terms of teams and drivers next year. So, don't discount anybody who's here today for being in contention for a seat.
No, not at all. Now, looking through more drivers, we have, a recognizable last name because we have two Hoekstras, I didn't even realize. We do have a Rienk Hoekstra in the Hawkeye.
Yes, we do. I wonder if there's any relation to Woodcock Hoekstra, actually. I'm not too sure, but they are both in... Well, no, they're not both in Hawkeyes. I was about to say they are. Woodcock is in the Adonis, and Rienk is in the Hawkeye. So that'll be interesting to see what Rienk Hoekstra can do. He's down in 11th at the moment on a 1:15.4. So interesting to see if he can bring himself further up the field. We do have 21 people at the moment, so we may see that grow a little more throughout the test. But decent sized crew, not too bad.
Indeed, and I'm looking at he's seemingly driving on the super soft tire, so there probably is more time to be gained a lot, especially from actually learning how these cars drive. But to be honest, the Hawkeye is not exactly the top of the grid car either.
Unfortunately, it's the bottom of the grid car. It's definitely the least developed car. I think they only had 1 or 2 bits of sort of development blocks they did very early on in the season. And then I think due to, numerous factors being, management being, they used quite a few drivers, I think, this year. So there's a bit of instability there, but pretty much they decided quite earlier on that, it's best to look towards 2017, focus all their resources there, money, R&D, and then go from that, really. So hopefully we'll see Hawkeye sort of back in the upper midfield where they But they have been for the last few years, as opposed to sort of, unfortunately, one of the back markers for this year.
Yes, that'd be very good to see as well. Now, I'm still looking through the field. Another driver I recognize, especially from the challenge with Terence Gretsch.
Yes, Terence Gretsch. Obviously, he was my teammate actually in Formula Challenge. He's a very good talent actually, and he also owns a team in Super Cup as well. So he's quite a big influence around these parts. He's in the Red Archer, which is a pretty good car to be honest. It's sort of 4th or 5th in terms of the best developed.
A race winner.
It's also a race winner, of course, with Fran Lopez, who really did some brilliant things with that car towards the end of the season. That was sort of the story of their season, really. It was a good start, and then it sort of petered off in the middle when they had a bit of driver instability. And then Fran came back. They had a big upgrade around Spa time, and then suddenly they were back up towards fighting for wins. So hopefully, if they can be a bit more consistent next year, no reason to see them not fighting for the title.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, with the way that they showed in the last couple with the third of the season, I presume. Really, I think they could be in for a fight with it, to be honest.
Definitely, yeah, and they've been up there before. You know, this is a team that has won championships before, I believe. So, you know, there's no reason to say they can't. I think they just need, you know, a really strong year next year. And if they can keep Fran Lopez, then he's got the pace to be up there. No, I don't see why they can't be a champion. If they can stick with the Valiant engine as well, then they're pretty much set, in my opinion.
Yes, and we'll see. Of course, that's all speculations, and there are a lot of teams that are able to do this and are able to fight for the championships, and but it will always be very difficult to challenge the teams like Norton or, of course, Vodbol. Those teams are always going to be very, very difficult to also beat, and there are, well, who knows? Maybe even Hawkeye will be up there and fighting for the championship for all we know.
You never know. As I say, if they've been saving this year like we suspect they have been. And again, a lot of winning the title in Super League is about driver stability, because we have to factor in the fact that teams are paying for drivers' wages and things like that. They don't want to be chopping and changing between 6 or 7 drivers like you can get away with in Formula Challenge. You need 2 dedicated, quick drivers who are going to bring in points week on week. And if you can get that, you're already halfway to being in sort of the top half of the teams. And then from there, it's about doing your development right and, to an extent, getting lucky sometimes, and you can find yourself in some really good results, really.
Yes, and that's very much correct. And I'm not entirely intimate with how the internals work in Super League, since I'm still fairly new around here. And when it comes to the money and the development, I've not been looking into it, of course, since I'm only involved here as a commentator.
You could say it's within your job remit, but you never know.
Maybe.
But it's pretty complex, the whole Super League system. You know, we're talking money here for drivers, for staff, for upgrades, for your engines, everything. You know, it's a really complex ecosystem, but it does produce pretty good racing. To be honest, it works.
Yes, I actually found that this was one of the better series to watch.
Definitely, yeah. There's some really good moments this year. Obviously, some of the politics off track has spoiled it a bit, but in terms of the actual racing on the track, I think we've seen some really good stuff. And you know, if we can get, you know, really good drivers, the teams are continually improving. There's no reason to say the quality of racing on track can improve even further.
Yes, that's very true. And if it can improve a bit more, then I think we would have one of the best series I would see in sim racing when it comes to actual racing. Because what I have seen, if it was just a little bit cleaner, I think it would be unbeatable, near enough to that.
Definitely, and I think that's obviously things that can be worked on. I know the DC will be looking at, you know, a lot of the current rules for next year, and doing a lot of refining, I think, will be the word. If we can get to a point where the driving standards are, you know, some of the best out there, then there's nothing to say this can't be a brilliant championship next year. It's going to take a lot of effort, but no reason why it can't be. And I think, just seeing some of the talent on display today really shows that there's still the interest. There's people who do want to move up, and I think it'll be great, really great for the league.
Yes, indeed. And just as we're talking still, the times are improving, and Mike Quint is improving all the time. And he's 1.1 seconds still in front of Oke Hoekstra, but they've both been improving, and the time on the top of the board at the moment is 1:11.7, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, the traffic, the track even, not the traffic, what am I saying? It's been a long day. But yeah, the times are starting to fall as the track is evolving a bit more. There's more cars going around, there's heat getting into the surface, starting to get into the tyres, gripping up a bit more. And we could see the times falling a little more, maybe. Quint is still pretty far ahead, 1.1 seconds ahead of Wilper. That really isn't bad at all, really. That's pretty good effort, actually. But then there's quite a wild split over the times. If you look down towards the bottom, we've got 116s, 118s. We got down there. We've got Chris Williamson in the Nijo, alongside Rob Mason. And we also have Matt Varley down there. Not someone I've heard of too much. I've seen him kicking around on the forums. He's in a Wouters. So they're not the most developed of cars, but I'm pretty sure we can see those times sort of start closing up a bit.
I think it's still fairly early. We still have an hour and a half to go of this, and I think at the moment drivers are just doing their own thing, and we'll see. This is very much like you would see in an actual test, in a Formula One or etc.
Yeah, like an actual free test, wouldn't it? It's people doing their own different things, and it all converges towards the end.
The only difference is we do actually have most of the drivers on track because they do want to take this opportunity as much as they can.
Exactly, yeah. There's a valuable, track time. Okay, unlike the other Super League tests, the teams aren't getting anything out of this. They won't be getting R&D points. It doesn't cost them anything to run laps here, as opposed to the 4 pre-season tests, which are used for getting research points, and they have to pay for their tyres and engines for that. But here it's all about the driver, really. It's about giving them track time with other people for benchmarks, with a track that's evolving, to give them the best experience of what Super League is, really, in terms of the car and how it feels and the competition around them.
Yes, and again, I think it's good to have an official environment for drivers to do that, and one that's there and it's organized. And I think it's all a really good idea to have a young driver test in a series like this.
Definitely, yeah. It's just a nice way, just to give other people sort of the chance to see what it's like, and whether they think they'd be suitable for next year. Whilst we've been talking, actually, I just noticed for Hoekstra having a bit of a moment. That's through turn 5 in the Adonis. He had a bit of a wiggle coming through, and unfortunately he's dropped it and slid off into the outside wall. So that's one car written off already, unfortunately.
I think I've seen a couple written off earlier. I just didn't mention it really. But they were mostly a lot less big than this one, to be honest.
So that's no rear left wheel, no rear wing, no rear suspension.
Well,
luckily,
I've seen someone
is virtual.
Yes, to be honest, I think I've seen someone do something very similar to Kimi Räikkönen from this year, so that was a bit scary.
Yes. Yeah, that's a pretty written off Adonis, but he's back out now with a fresh set of rear wheels and rear wing, and ready to go and give it to Mike Quint in terms of times there.
So basically just ran up to the pits in an instant and got into the third car.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. He's if only we had no cars again.
Yes, we may have had Mr. Grosjean actually race in real life in Formula 1, but exactly. I digress.
We do indeed digress. We're up 24 cars, Kacper.
Oh, that's actually quite a full grid.
We've got David Franchich has turned up. He's in the Vodball, obviously their reserve driver from this year. And we also got 2 others who I can't say I know too much about, but we have Kacper Onwin in the Storm Racing car. And who else we've got? We've got Lorenzo De Ciutis, I think. he is also in the Storm Racing car. So interesting to see what they can do. They obviously don't have any laps on the board at the moment, so they've just joined, but they've got an hour and a half to show us what they can do, really.
Yes, and again, there's quite a bit of time to go. A couple more drivers that some of you may know. Drivers like Eric Strane, for example. He's a driver that I actually drove in the team once in GPVWC.
Indeed, yeah, Eric Strane, he's a well-known guy around the GPVWC parts. He was the 2015 Formula Challenge champion. He then moved up to Super Cup last year, and I think he'd be the first one to admit it wasn't the best of seasons for him. I don't think he could really get to grips with the car. So it sort of petered off towards the end. A little better over in ITC, but some good performances over there. But you know, he's got a chance here with Norton. That's a pretty big chance, to be honest. Norton being, you know, a big team, the car's really good. So he's down in 16th at the moment on a 1:15.6. Hasn't been running the super soft though, so I don't think we've seen the true pace there. So we'll be interested to see what he can do later on.
Yes, I think he's going to be one of those drivers to watch later on once they do go onto the softer tire.
Definitely. I've just noticed we've got a red Archer spun around there. That's Terence Grech. That's midway around the track, that looks like. I think around to the turn 8 area, seem to have dropped it at one of the slow hairpins.
Oh, hit one of the Marstons,
Oh,
Marta, yeah, Nordstens, sorry, yeah.
Nordstens, yeah, by Martex, that's the confusion.
Yes, there we go.
But yeah, so if he's hit one of them and then sort of ended up pointing the wrong way around to the hairpin there.
Oh, it was Argento Sierra that got hit.
Ah, okay, there we go.
Right, back onto the drivers quickly. Another one, Jeffrey Fournier, another one of the Formula Challenge drivers.
Yes, no one of the Formula Challenge ones who also made appearances in Super Cup, I think, for a bit this year. Not too sure if he turned up in Super League for anything, but he's a guy who we've always known has had good pace for the last few years. It'll be interesting to see if he does move up to Super Cup full time next year. Obviously, he was trying for Epic Racing in Formula Challenge. So interested to see what he does next year in terms of where he goes. I could see him in Super Cup definitely. Interesting to see if he considers Super League. But we'll have to wait and see. He's in the woods, which is definitely seen a return to form this year in terms of a team. Actually, they've been struggling for the last few years. 2013 sort of up to 2015, they were sort of quite low down. But this year they've turned things around. And definitely, I think the signing of Lewis Redshaw really helped. They had some, really good pace at times. You can't look past Roy Schroten as well as their second driver. He did some brilliant stuff this year as well. And they've been rewarded with a pretty good constructors' position in the standings. I think they were P5 possibly, I think, in the end, which really isn't too bad at all.
By the way, I was just quickly checking. I forgot. I nearly forgot to check this. I thankfully just did, and we were talking about Dino Paolini and wondered if he actually did take a race win in Super Cup, and he has won.
He did, yeah. I couldn't quite remember, but yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yep, race 1 in Circuit of the Marquez.
Very nice, yeah. He put some really good performances in this year, so he definitely deserves the chance to test the Norton.
Yes, and that's definitely a driver to watch for possibly moving up. It very much depends on whether he wants to or not at this point, but it would be nice to see Dino after such a good appearance in that series.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's I'd say nice to see him, and there's some brilliant drivers on display here. Really good talents from all corners of the league, really.
I have just a little bit of bad news. My R Factor just crashed, so I should be back. Please take over for a sec.
It's all right, because I've just seen David Franchich have a little bit of a moment down at that's at turn 4. His car sort of snapped on him as he came into braking. As David, obviously being the reserve at football, he was. I think we all knew he was going to get a chance here at Youth Driver Test. And he's at the moment he's P7 on the medium tyre, which is not too bad actually. So I think we could see him up the top towards the end of the session, definitely giving Mike Quint a run for his money.
It really, I do really wonder who will challenge Quint by the end, because he seems very quick. But of course, it is not impossible, not by any means. And these drivers are all just, again, they're on different fuel loads, and it very much depends at the moment on what they're trying to do.
It's certainly not impossible when the gap has closed up to half a second now. Hoekstra has improved to a 1:12.2 and is now half a second off Mike Quint. So we're seeing sort of the pace of the Adonis as well as Woodpeca's well-known skill starting to show out now. Meanwhile, let's look through. We've got this is one we haven't mentioned, Maciej Milnek, who I'm trying to think. He did the second half of the season in FC, I think, for Hints Motorsport.
I'm not entirely sure. I know it could be very well be, but I think I remember him doing some of the Atlantic series as well. I could be wrong.
Yes, he did some of the Atlantic series as well as a few super races towards the end of the season. He's in P3, also in a Vobble, on a 1:12.228. So he's not far at all from the top two of Quint and Hoekstra. But he's definitely shown his worth really in the half a season he's been at GPV.
Definitely a driver to watch next season if he's going to keep at it, and it looks like he will. Honestly, I think Mike Quint may be being contested at some point pretty soon, considering I think his best time so far must have been on a super soft tire, because I have seen him on that tire before. And to be honest, Hoekstra and Maciej Milnek both were doing their best times on, I think, soft tires. So, this could be very interesting by the end.
I think his time will be definitely challenged. So I'm just having a look through his current stint data at the moment. He's on a set of softs, and he's doing sort of 14.5s to 15s. So to me, that suggests he's either put some more fuel in the car, or the soft tyres are really having quite a big difference. So he's probably looking at doing a bit of a longer sort of race strategy at the moment, whilst others are sort of cycling through their own strategies, maybe dropping the fuel load a bit, messing about with setups as well, because that will have a lot of time if they can nail the setup. So yeah, definitely look for Quint to be challenged pretty soon.
Yes, and these cars, of course, as any kind of very high level open wheeler, and especially these, will be very setup dependent. So yes, those drivers will definitely be fiddling around with those that part of the car.
Definitely, yeah. There's a lot to be gained if you can nail the setup. I've been sort of working with Green Stripes this year as a reserve driver, and it's very noticeable the amount of time you can gain if you can just get that setup just right for every track. And of course, the setup will change per track. Each track is different to the other, and the car needs to reflect that really. So there's, for some people who haven't driven a Superleague car around Interlagos, it may take them a little while to try and find that sweet spot. But when they do, the time will come.
Yes, they're actually quite difficult, and I think at one point I actually did take out one of these cars around. It must have been the Red Bull Ring back when these were driving in Austria, just for myself to see where I would be, and I think I was about 3 or 4 seconds off the pace. So, yes, it's not very easy at all to drive these things quick, and you do have to put in a lot of time to get the setup right and to up there. So, the drivers that you see up there with the time